Hello and welcome to Pretty Good Gaming. My name is Mike Williams. I'm joined by Jake Kulkowski.
Hello.
We've both got a nice cup of tea. We're going to sit here and talk about strategy games on a PC for the next quarter of an hour. So strap in, everyone. This is going to get wild.
Actually, people thought that our Divinity video was very relaxing. So if
that's what we can tap into that market and it just chilling people out.
Yeah.
Like just
if you're listening in the bath right now, hello.
On the drive home, maybe. Let's tell ourselves that is what we're doing here, Jake. Providing some whale noise for people to fall asleep to.
Yeah.
So Total War Warhammer 2 came out last week on PC. It was the 29th, I think it came out. That might not be exactly right, but who cares? It's a strategy game that's pretty unique. It's got its own genre pretty much, isn't it? It's turn-based strategy on a grand campaign. So you've got a race, a state to look after. You've got to expand and take turns against AI opponents. But then there's real-time tactical battles sprinkled in between as well. So you're actually controlling hundreds, if not thousands of units at a time, fighting on battlefields, and it's all very exciting. And with Warhammer, it's kind of entered this fantasy realm, which just takes the whole thing to a whole other level. It's quite a different beast. So what I think we're trying to talk about today is, firstly, why Total War Warhammer 2 is the best Total War since last year's Total War Warhammer 1, in my opinion, and also why it's the perfect entry into the series. Like why this is, believe it or not, Total War Warhammer 2 is the best, honestly, is like the best it's ever been to jump into the series. Am I wrong saying that, Jake?
No, I think this is an important thing to get said straight away. Is like Total War has a very high point of entry and it's got a huge cult fan base. Like everyone who plays Total War that I know seems to have played it like forever. So this is actually the first Total War game I've properly delved into. So you're aware of the two perspectives that we've got here. Mike, you've been playing Total War feverishly over many years. Mm-hmm. I have not.
You're dead right. Like the fans of it have usually been playing it for a long time. Like probably, you always hear people say, oh, I was in it since medieval Total War, or Rome Total War was the big one that I played, or whatever. The people have been around for a long time. Same with me. Like I got in with Shogun Total War. I was on board with that very early on. On the surface, I was a bit skeptical about this, being a long-time Total War fan. I wasn't sure about Warhammer at all. I was like, this looks cool, but do they really need 3 games? I mean, this is going to be like the fucking Hobbit movies again. Do you know what I mean? It's like that kind of stretching something out over so many products with all the DLC sprinkled in between and all that. But I was completely converted by Total War Warhammer. I thought it was absolutely one of the best strategy games of all time, and I've got no qualms saying that, because it gives you 5 different races in the original, and they all feel completely different to players, and I thought that was absolutely astounding. Changed the game for Total War completely. This does exactly the same thing, right? So there's 4 races in this one, right? The High Elves, the Dark Elves, the Skaven, and the Lizard Men. So what have you been playing with, Jake?
I've actually played all of them now, apart from the Dark Elves. I played as the Skaven, who are like these metal as fuck rat men that like worship a horned rat, and they live on the pestilence and terror of others. They have to feed on corpses. Oh man, it's pretty brutal. So
that's pretty big, because that is like the most interesting and unique faction they've probably had in a Total War game for ever. Maybe, I don't know. Is there that different to anything else they've ever had? And that was the first thing that you went into.
Well, exactly, but that's what's funny, because I've got no basis of comparison, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I started playing it, and then there's different aspects of the game. So obviously there's huge battles, but there's also like settlements and stuff like that you've got to control. And with the Skaven, there's a bit of a complicated mechanic where you can get military power from the unrest, civil unrest and things like that, and it kind of forces you to move constantly with your rat plague and not make loads of settlements and stay there. So I kind of didn't like that, so I thought I'll try the Lizard Men for a bit. Tried them for a bit, and I thought I'm going to just try with the High Elves, because that seems a bit more traditional, easy to follow, because this game you need to apply logic to it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking of a real battle, you've got archers and you've got spearmen and with swords, you kind of know what they're all going to do, right? Because you're a human being listening to this video, so that's such a stupid thing to say.
Right though. You know what other human beings can do, right?
Exactly.
They're not flying phoenixes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not really sure of the ins and outs of a night slinger Skaven rat man, so I thought I'll go with the High Elves. So I'm playing the High Elves now, although the footage that you'll be watching right now is me and Mike doing a little bit of a co-op campaign. More on that later, as Lizard Men, which is pretty cool. So I've actually played all of them.
Very cool. Okay, what you can get from what you've just said there, Jake, is that they're all very, very different, aren't they? They all handle differently. And I think I was telling you about High Elves because I was a bit surprised that you got in as Skaven, and High Elves is what I went in as first because they are the most traditional. They're just very straightforward. They're like disciplined, like you can hold them in lines, and it looks like proper, opening battle of Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring type stuff when all your elves are stood there solid and there's like a wave of Skaven kind of crashing up against them. It looks like incredible. God, so that's kind of the main strength of this Warhammer kind of spin-off chain, is that there is huge variety between each of the factions, right?
Yeah, in a way that you wouldn't get if you were playing the sort of more realistic ones, because at the end of the day they're just humans. But like I'm saying, when you add giant walking lizards into the mix, it's a completely different place. I mean, obviously, of course, there's going to be loads of not even like subtle nuances. There's huge differences between like the Huns and the Romans and all that.
Of course. Yeah.
But I mean, compared to it's flying lizard. Come on.
Of course, yeah. But it's like the big one for me is Shogun 2, which up until the Warhammer games was my favourite Total War game. Yeah. It was immaculate, perfect Total War game. But all the factions were slight variations on samurai clans that had different colours, maybe different types, styles of armour, different emphasis on different units. Some were stronger archers, but really they were still just archers, the same as everyone else had. So this is absolutely, completely thorough and complete transformation from each faction to the other. So if you don't like one, then you can hop into the other. So that's one of the big strengths of this game, and one of the big reasons why, if you've ever been faintly interested in Total War but never got into it, or even if you went into the original historical ones, this is why the fantasy setting is so great. You mentioned the tutorials. I just want to talk about that really quick. You said the tutorial was like it was a huge boon for you. It was really like a useful tool. I did find it handholdy, but that's only because I'm experienced. But the way they've kind of set all that out, like they've tied it into the story in a very good way. Yeah. Which is like you're getting a bit of and that's the other thing. There is a huge focus on story this time around. There's actual kind of narration and which is a big focus, and the whole campaign is story driven. And they've tied that into the tutorial. So the tutorial kind of, the early stages of the campaign basically spoon feeds you some really easy battles and some really easy decisions to take that are explained to you by the narrator, who's a very cool narrator, but very, very cool. So the tutorial you were pretty pleased with as well.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's called Warhammer 2, I didn't feel like I was being plonked in the middle of this ongoing story, so that was a big help, first of all. And then this tutorial's it's basic things, and I know a lot of Total War fans, because this is the thing about Total War fans, they're omnipresent. They've been around forever and they know everything. I don't think I've ever heard any, I think I'm the first person I've heard speaking about Total War it's a new thing. Yeah. So I'm going to say this, and I know that other people are laughing at me, but it's just so basic, things like learning about formations and watching your flank and what the different troops do. I mean, it's obvious when you think about it, but this game just really explains things that maybe other games don't have the detail in. In some RTS games, it doesn't matter if you're on a hill or not, because who cares? But on this, it's a huge advantage. Yeah. Flanks, positions, morale, leadership, it's all important, and it's all explained to you in a very easy way, and it's optional.
And the meta stuff, the grand campaign stuff, that's probably more intricate, if anything, because there's so many different things going on now. There's a lot of micromanagement on that campaign, but they've still made it super, super accessible. They've made it very palatable. It's
not forced either, is it? You can just select whether you want that to happen or not.
Exactly,
right? Optional, but it's very in-depth. So if you're a brand new player, and this is pretty much essential, and it's really, really useful. I don't know if the other tutorials have been fleshed out as much, but I've gathered online seems to say that they have not been as in-depth as this
Definitely
one.
Not, no.
And that's, of course, the most important thing. Teach people how to play your game.
So there's two big reasons there why it's an excellent starting point. The third is just the kind of fantasy setting overall, right? That's the big payoff of these games. That's why a lot of players will kind of deal with some of the other stuff, some of the stuff that they're not that interested really, but even though that is hugely entertaining to someone like me, but you might go through the game purely for the spectacle of these huge fights, right? Which they've animated and they've made a terrific job on it. They've really there's solo dueling animations. So if you've got a giant dinosaur in your team and then there's a dragon on the other team, if there's a giant dinosaur in your army and there's a dragon in the other army, the dragon touches down, they have a bit of a fight. Yeah. Then there's unique animations for that, and they have a little scuffle. It's absolutely terrific.
Yeah, that's a Total War, finesse that I think Total War series has over anything else. The camera is obviously kind of bird's eye view, like most strategy games. You can zoom in. You can zoom all the way down to one particular unit, and you can watch them fight. And it's not just like your boring slash. Like you're saying, it's like a brawl. There's a button that I had like a dinosaur. You'll see it on screen now, right? I had a dinosaur. Press this button. It just zooms in on this motherfucker. He's killing all these rats. What's happening with the rest of my army right now? I don't know. I don't know if I even care. At that point. Exactly. Mike's got it locked down. Let's look at this dinosaur destroy some rats. So, I mean, there's like, so you're saying spectacle, fantasy and spectacle. Totally. You can, oh man, there's some big battles. Like, we played for 2.5 hours last night, and you had loads of scraps. I didn't have one battle, but I've been building this army, and I'm going to eventually have the battle of my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's that kind of that meta story as well. It gives it this, especially in these Warhammer games, it gives you kind of this role-playing feeling as well, because there's actual skill trees. Your characters, your lords, your heroes will progress. You need to level them up, and they'll acquire armor, weapons, like magical weapons. They'll build a retinue of followers. All this stuff that just kind of you accumulate as you would in a normal RPG. It gives you this sense of a role-playing thing. So it's kind of sneakily become a story-driven RPG, as well as a real-time tactical battle and a grand campaign thing. So it's just trying to do all of these things at once. And it's kind of doing it, I think. You can imagine if you're a veteran Total War player, then you'll be afraid of the Vortex campaign, because it's kind of, a very story-driven affair. And there is, inescapably a big focus on the story. The story is centered around this great vortex, which is, illustrated on the map, like literally, and it's kind of central to the story as well. So that's like this heat sink that exists in the world for all like evil, all chaos energy or whatever, and that's kind of on the flux. So all these different factions want to take over that in the story by performing these rites. They're going to take over that vortex. For everyone's got different reasons for wanting to do it. It's working pretty well. I think it's a really good idea, a good kind of ramping up of the tension. I think that is the kind of biggest triumph of it. If the biggest triumph of the first one was the kind of the variety of the factions, so each faction feels totally different to play as, and you feel like a big change when you go from one to the other. It feels like a different game almost. Then in this game, it is like that story, that ramping up of tension, that way that they've made it feel like an RPG. Like your army isn't just a thing that you move from town to town and from battle to battle anymore. Simon Miller, previously off of Video Gamer, and
now he does some wrestling
stuff, whatever. So this is providing this for balance now. Of course, so Simon Miller says that Total War Warhammer 2 is more boring than maths. I'm inclined to disagree, but does he have a point?
There's a lot of things that you can akin to maths homework. A lot of studying involved. Like again, Gaz hasn't got any interest in playing this game because he says that the point of entry for like learning and things like that, he just doesn't have time, and you can completely see that. I really wasn't fussed on this game at all. I installed it simply because we were given a copy. Okay? I'm gonna put it out there, guys. I'm a regular guy, and the way that it gets you up to speed with this game, sure, there's like little macros, and you have to watch like 15 hours of Lionheart on YouTube or whatever, but
highly recommended, by the way.
Yeah. So like, if you want to get really good, but I mean, I've not played a game like this that's made me think about it afterwards for so long, because it's like its own genre. Because like I was thinking about battle formations in bed before I went to sleep. I was like, what happens if next time I cover my left flank? And it was like, I'm thinking about it. I couldn't wait to get into work to talk to Mike about battle formations.
The co-op in the game is pretty fun. I mean, it's implemented really well. I was personally very skeptical of it. I've not played any co-op in any Total War game before this. You can play as allies or as enemies on a huge campaign map, same as normal single player, but there's two of you on the map and you each take it in turns. It doesn't feel like you're waiting around for ages.
How it does that is because if you're playing competitively, let's say Mike gets into a fight with an AI enemy, let's say like the lizard men, for example, and he's a high elves. For that particular battle, I can take over the lizard men. So even though they're not the faction I'm actually currently playing, it means that each battle we're both engaged in. It's the same with co-op. So me and Mike were playing as the lizard men, and as you'll see here, like, he's gifted me some units, and now I can control half of his army. So even though they're not the battles that I am in with my personal faction of lizard men,
you can be involved in it.
Yeah, exactly. Because in fact, we played for 2.5 hours, and I had no battles, but I still got to partake because of that. 2.5 hours went fast. And you don't really feel like you're waiting around. You can't see everything that your partner can see. I couldn't see the things that was popping up on the screen for Mike. Like, he had some dialogue choices and things like that. I didn't get to see that. I could see the overworld a lot of the time, and we were communicating on like Discord or whatever, so we knew what was happening. You were playing it without Discord, it would have been probably...
It's the kind of slow-paced experience where, incidentally, kind of like Divinity Original Sin 2, which is the last game we covered like this, it's got that kind of pace to it, that kind of vibe where you're both just kind of milling around doing your own thing, but also it's, you know, working cooperatively, and it's got just the right amount of tension sprinkled in between long periods of just kind of just talking and making decisions and whatever. So it's an interesting co-op experience. So
my favourite stuff when the battle scenes, you can, you know, cause sometimes you're trying to explain yourself but you don't really know how.
Yeah.
You can just get like a little magic marker,
and
you can draw a line. So you can say, go here, go to these trees.
And it even puts a little arrowhead at the end, so it's like an old school like World War II documentary or something. Like you can just kind of draw a line and there'll be an arrow, and it suddenly looks like you've instructed your co-op partner to kind of, you know, move along the flank or whatever. It looks
pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to finishing the campaign, I guess.
So yeah, the moral of the story here is not rush out and buy Total War Warhammer 2. It's that if you're gonna rush out and buy any Total War game, make it this one, because it's just the best one. So it's the most user friendly. It's got the best tutorial. It's got the most interesting world and vibrant setting, and it's, you know, just a really well designed, balanced game. It's got a Metacritic rating of 87. I don't know if I've already said that, but it's you know, it's being very well reviewed, and the player counts are not as good as the first one. But I imagine if you jumped into the first one and didn't like it, then why would you buy the second?
If you want value for money, it looks like one of those games you can put not tens but hundreds of hours in, and each race plays differently. So it looks like if you're going to spend your money on
any Total War game, make it this one.
This is the one.
So there you go. Thank you very much for watching and listening this far. You've been a pleasure to talk to, I suppose. I don't know. Am I talking to you now or the audience? Who knows? Should we just leave it ambiguous? All the best movies end like that.
Shouts out David Lynch.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
I've been Mike Williams, joined by Jake Kulkowski.
Bye now.
See you next time.